So let me get this straight. He's homeless, he's rude and obnoxious, he's dirty, he's sexually inappropriate, he's a musician. And the one problem you have with him is that he sometimes turns into a demon? The heart wants what the heart wants, I guess. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to it in the description below, and it's going to tell you everything you need to know about the horror movie syllabus. But in short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But this is a different type of video. This is our Is It Syllabus-Worthy series. This is where I take a recommendation from you guys, something you suggest in the comments to one of my videos, something I've never seen before, and I check it out for the first time, and then I let you know, is it syllabus-worthy? Is there something about it, noteworthiness, goodness, whatever, that makes it worthy of being on the horror movie syllabus? And today the movie that we're looking at is My Demon Lover. And My Demon Lover is recommended to us by Castellar Daniel Garcia. And Castellar recommended this in our occult video. And he gave us a whole list of movies to check out, movies that he thought were good, a whole long list, most of which I had already seen before, and many of which were discussed here on the channel. So it's a pretty good list in that sense. You get a lot of movies that were syllabus worthy, and they're already on there. And there was a few on there that I hadn't seen, and one of them was My Demon Lover. So I thought, let's start there. Let's check it out. And all I know about it is, when I pulled it up, I saw the poster for it, like the cover image of it, and it looks very much like an 80s comedy. It's very much 80s comedy. That's clear. So that's really all I know going in is it's going to be an 80s comedy horror movie. So I went in blind with no other ideas about it. Didn't look up any synopses or anything like that. Castellar didn't give me any other information, just put it on the list. So I just went in blind like I like to do. And did I like it? Did I hate it? Let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're looking at today is My Demon Lover. My Demon Lover came out in 1987 and is directed by a man named Charlie Leventhal, and I'm not at all familiar with him, and it looks like he doesn't have a lot to his resume. There was only 4 features that I saw on his resume, and they all seem to look like kind of like this movie, the kind of the 80s comedy stuff. So not really a big oeuvre from Charlie, and not much to speak of, so to speak, and I'm not familiar with him anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm just judging the movie based on what it gave me, which is frankly kind of a lot of times what we should be doing, and that's what we're going to do today. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie follows a young woman who's unlucky in love and has very bad taste in men, and she runs across a homeless musician who is kind of a jerk and a cad, but they have some sort of energy or a connection between them, and she kind of falls for him, and they're trying to hammer out a romance, but unbeknownst to her, he's been cursed by a woman in his past as a child, so that every time he gets sexually aroused, he becomes a demon. And of course, this is going to put a bit of a hamper on their love life and their sex life, and hijinks abound. Oh, and by the way, there's also a serial killer on the loose. Is it him? I'm going to go ahead and stop there so as not spoil the movie, but the movie is 80s, and that's the first thing we've got to look at here, is that it's got a ton of 80s charm or nostalgia to it, which I enjoy. I grew up in the 80s. I like these kind of movies. I saw a lot of these kind of movies as a kid. I enjoy them, and there's a certain nostalgia factor for them. So I kind of wonder how much people who are younger than me, people who grew up in the 90s or 2000s or whatever, how much they'd feel this movie, because the charm of the 80s might just be completely lost on them. And this movie is hard into this 80s charm. 1987 says a little later in the 80s, but it's still got the 80s energy to it. It's got the 80s New York, which, was much scarier than the New York of today, the real New York of today, after, it was all cleaned up and everything. And as a kid, I was afraid of New York because in the movies, it always looked so rough and tumble. And it's for movies like this, where it's like, it's not safe to be out at night. It's not safe to take the subway and stuff like that. But this movie is just leaning hard into that. That nostalgic charm, that vibe, that 80s vibe that's given me is a welcome thing. It's earning goodwill right off the bat. Like the fashions in this movie they're not like way over the top 80s. It's not like, like some of these movies that are set in the 80s that we see now that it's like everybody's wearing like neon. It's like that. It wasn't really like that. And this movie is kind of a little bit more evocative of what the 80s fashions really were like, but it's fun. And I noticed right off the bat, it's a New Line Cinema movie. So this is a couple years after Nightmare on Elm Street's come out, so New Line's now a big player, and they're making movies. Bob Shea, the producer, is his name's on this one, and he's the king now, right? He's doing good. And of course, Lynn Shay makes a cameo in here because Bob Shay's her brother, and he put her in the movie. So she's got this fun little cameo as a waitress in the movie. She's very funny in it. So it's one scene, but it's a funny scene. So right off the bat, early on in the movie, I'm feeling pretty good about this, you know. And again, it's leaning into the 80s hard. It's even got like an 80s montage scene where they're having a fun, cute day together, like this long date where they're doing like, you know, going in balloons and going to the park and playing and on the jungle gym and stuff like that. It's cute. It's fun. It's very familiar to me. It's using practical effects. You know, there's, you know, this character that turns into a demon. And so when it's a demon, it's no CGI here, right? 1987. So it's using these practical effects, and they're pretty decent. They're decent effects. They're not amazing. It's not like The Thing or anything like that, but they're not bad. They're not laughable and embarrassing. Some of them you can still see the seams a little bit now. It's a little dated, but it works pretty good. So all of this is charming to me. It's not amazing. It's not a mind-blowing thing. Like, oh, this is so great, and I'm so engrossed. But I'm having a fun time. It's charming. It's cute. It's nostalgic. And that's working for me. Again, that might not work for everybody. I think it's a certain age bracket, a certain type of person, i.e. me, that it's working for. But it is working. And the production is passable. Like I said, the practical effects are decent. They're good. They're not embarrassing. Like, it's clearly a low-budget movie, but it looks fine. It doesn't look really, really cheap. Like, they have you know, a lot of location shooting, stuff like that. And then, you know, they're not doing a lot of special effects that are terribly complicated other than the makeup effects. And they've put energy into that to make it look good. They have some set pieces that they don't look amazing, but they look cool. Like there's a castle at the end, and it looks cool. It's kind of like a Hammer throwback. You know what I mean? It doesn't look realistic, but it looks gothic and atmospheric, and it works for the movie. It fits in the movie really, really well. The acting is fine. It's not amazing. It's not great. The actors are okay. More on that in a little bit because that's where an issue lies, and it's a pretty big one. But the most part, the movie is well made. You know, the monster designs are done by Bernie Wrightson, famous comic book writer, Swamp Thing creator, and so he did some of the storyboards to the movie and stuff like that. That was an interesting thing. Again, I found this out after I watched the movie, but it's nice to see that they had some talent in like visualizing this movie and recognizing it and making it come to life. And then they've got this serial killer subplot that is pretty good. It's a pretty good hook there. It's a little bit more of the horrors aspect of the movie is tied into that rather than the demonology aspect of it, which is played more for comedy, played more for laughs. This one has this serial killer that's going around town, and there's this mystery of like who's the serial killer. And of course, you've got this guy turning into a demon, and these women are being slashed like by like a demon type thing. It kind of seems like it's obvious where it's going, stuff like that. But the movie, it's a silly movie. Okay, it's not taking itself seriously. It knows it's silly. It knows it's campy. It knows it's a goofy comedy, and it's leaning into that. And it's that's a welcome move. It's not trying to take itself too seriously. It's trying to have a good time, and it knows what it is. It's not ashamed of it, and it's leaning into it. And you know, I have respect for that. I'm more likely to go along with a movie that knows what it is and it's not trying to do too much. And that's this movie in a nutshell. Here's my problem: the movie's central romance doesn't really hold well. For me, that doesn't hold the movie together, and it needs to because it's the focus of the movie. You've got this girl, and she's really sad sack. She's like this pushover who gets taken advantage of by people, and her boyfriends are really horrible people, but she's just like forgiving them and letting herself get walked all over, and it's really hard to root for her. It's hard to like her. She is not a very relatable character, at least not to somebody like me. And you kind of just want to like smack some sense into her and be like, girl, snap out of it. Like, don't let people do this to you. In fact, she's got a best friend character that's telling her this throughout the entire movie. And it's like the stuff goes in one ear and out the other. And she's just not learning this. Now, I guess maybe narratively speaking, this is by design that you need to have a woman like this to fall for a guy like this. Because your lead guy is a ridiculous bore. He is like just like terrible. He is obnoxious and rude, and he's his charm does not make up for the myriad problems with him. Like I mentioned, he's you know, he's a homeless musician living on the streets, dirty and gross, and he's just wandering around like just casually sexually assaulting women on the street, and it's played for laughs. And it's the 80s, I get that, but it doesn't. Even then, it would just kind of come off as like at least not likable, not charming, not cute. And I think the movie wants us to think it's kind of cute and funny, and make us believe that she would fall for this guy, and I don't. Maybe I would have bought into it more in the 80s when I was a kid, but I definitely, as an adult now, you know, in 2025, I'm not buying into this romance. at all. And it doesn't help that the actors don't really have a lot of chemistry. Like I said, the actors are perfectly fine. They're not the acting's not bad. The dialogue's kind of bad. This is not the greatest of scripts. Is where I guess where I'm kind of going with this, because the actors, they don't have a lot of chemistry and the dialogue's not really making it work. So this romance feels implausible. I don't really buy that they're together, even though this woman's been established as somebody who's just gonna let, has a terrible taste in men and let guys walk all over her. So maybe it makes sense that she'd fall for this guy, and maybe we buy that he would get into her because she's cute and she lets him stay at her place. Maybe I'll buy into that. But it also happens really, really fast. Like within one day, like they're in love. And I don't know, man. Like the movie script didn't do enough to sell me on this. The actors weren't able to elevate the script to make me buy into it. The chemistry wasn't strong enough that I could feel it and buy into the love for it. And normally you just kind of let that slide, except it's like the central focus of the movie. This movie's not much of a horror movie. It really is the focus on this couple. And this guy, he's got this problem. Like every time he gets close to her and gets aroused, he starts to turn into a demon. And of course, he doesn't want her to find out he's a demon or doesn't want to hurt her and stuff like that. And that's your central drama of this movie. And it's kind of trite because I don't really care if these people get together because I don't buy into their love. So that's a bit of a challenge. And I really feel like they needed to have more focus on the serial killer aspect of this and that mystery about that, because that's, I think, where the interesting stuff goes. That's where the horror stuff goes. And that's where you can maybe have a better balance in the horror and the comedy. I'm always talking when it comes to horror comedies about them having a bit of balance so that there's an equal part of horror and comedy that feels like each are getting served. And this feels more like an 80s comedy that has a couple of horror elements in it. It has a demon in it, has a serial killer in it, but it doesn't feel like that's the focus. And then the third act shifts into focusing more on that story, and it works. It's fine, but it's not. It's not even like it's too little, too late. It's just like I kind of wish like the serial killer aspect had been a little bit more prominent. There's like these side characters that are talking about it, and these side characters get like plot points that are kind of just like dangling around. There's not really. It's a very loose script. It's a very loose script. It's not very tight, and it could have been tightened up a little bit to give us a little bit more of a tighter narrative, a little bit better romance, and a little bit more focus on the mystery and serial killer aspect. I think that would have definitely improved this movie quite a bit, would have made it feel a little bit more than just that cute 80s nostalgia trip that is kind of like fluffy and kind of, not really weighty or really that interesting, and make it a little bit more engaging and a little bit more memorable and a little bit more meaty, I guess. As a result, it winds up just being kind of like this fun nostalgia trip that I did have a good time watching. It was perfectly fine time, a way to pass the time, but was it good enough to make it onto the syllabus? Well, let's find out. So, is My Demon Lover syllabus worthy? Nah, no. It's a trifle of a movie. I think you could tell just by listening to me talk about it. Like it's cute, it's a fun time, it's okay, but it's there's not enough meat on this bone at all. There's really nothing noteworthy about this. Not the performances, not the story, not the 80s fashion. It's cute, but it's not. There's nothing on it to really hang your hat on as being something that warrants getting on the syllabus. I mean, maybe Bernie Wrightson's involvement, but even that's just not nearly enough. It's a harmless, entertaining movie. It's a great way to pass the time. It's perfectly fine, but it's not really terribly memorable, if I'm being honest with you. It's a little bit forgettable. And this is echoed by the fact that there's not really any critical love for this movie. It was kind of panned when it came out, and it hasn't really made any impact since then. It doesn't seem to have any kind of real cult reputation or anything like that. I'd never heard of it before. It doesn't seem like people talk about it a lot. It doesn't make any kind of impact in the horror genre. And I think it's because it is forgettable. Like, I just watched it like last night for this video, and I'm already kind of starting to forget about it. It's really just doesn't stick with you all that much. And again, perfectly fine. I had a perfectly fine time. Like I said, the romance wasn't holding for me very much, but I wasn't having a bad time with it. But it just wasn't going to be nearly enough to get across the line. It wasn't even close to the line, if I'm being honest with you. This movie's kind of like Teen Wolf, like the 1980s Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox, but with just like a little bit more horror with the serial killer stuff like so. It's like the Teen Wolf with more horror and less basketball, I guess. Needed a little bit more basketball. My Demon Lover needed more basketball in it. But that's the kind of tone you're looking at with this movie. It's just kind of a silly 80s comedy that has horror elements into it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there are better horror comedies out there, even in the time period, better horror comedy romances out there. And, like off the top of my head, American Werewolf in London stands out as something that's way better than this one. And it is way funnier romance that I'll buy into even though that romance is a little bit rushed too, I'll buy into a little more. Hell, Teen Wolf is a better movie than this movie, but it's not bad. It's just not all that consequential. It's an inconsequential movie. It's not offensive. It's not a problem. It's just fine. It's perfectly fine. I had a good enough time watching it, but I wouldn't necessarily go and recommend it to anybody or tell you have to see it. But I also say I wouldn't warn you off for seeing it either. If you want to check it out, check it out. You've heard from me what I think of it, and if you do check it out, let me know what you think, because I maybe I'm being a little harsh on this one. Maybe it's got a little bit more charm than I think it does, but I think it's perfectly fine. It's charming as an 80s throwback. It's charming as a nostalgia trip, but that's, for me, that's all it is. It's just a little bit of nostalgic love. So those are my thoughts on My Demon Lover. Like I said, it's a charming 80s nostalgia trip, but for me, that's all it really is. But again, in the comments, leave me some comments if you think otherwise, if you think there's more charm to it than I do, or if you think it warrants a little bit more love, let me know. But again, perfectly fine, but inconsequential. And so, that's really all I have to say, but we can discuss it more in the comments if you think it warrants more discussion. Right now, what warrants some discussion is this Horror Trivial Pursuit card I'm holding. As you know, I like to look at a Horror Trivial Pursuit card live on camera and try to answer it live on camera, and hopefully not embarrass myself by getting it wrong. And since My Demon Lover is about a demon, let's look at the monster category on the card. And here's the question. What was the country of origin for the 1922 film Nosferatu? Okay, I know the answer to this question. And this is not necessarily an easy question to answer, although since the 2024 Nosferatu just came out a few months ago, as of the time of recording this video, maybe it's fresher in everybody's mind. Like that movie was got a lot of buzz and it was pretty well liked and everything. So maybe if you saw that one and you've never even seen the original, maybe you know the answer to this question. I know the answer to this question. I'm like 98% sure that I know the answer to this question, but it's not necessarily the easiest one. But if you know about the 1922 Nosferatu, which, by the way, is a bona fide horror classic and is one of the most important movies in horror history, and if you know anything about like the time period that it came out in 1922 and what we're talking about in terms of the types of films we're talking about, the silent film era and stuff, that might give you a little bit of hints into it. If you studied film, you should probably be able to figure this one out. Honestly, if you study film, you probably know the answer to this outright, but I don't know if that's a helpful hint or if that's just going to make it more confusing to you. So I don't know if that's helpful at all. I'm just kind of really buying time to give you guys some time to think about this one, but I don't know. Have I prattled on long enough? Probably have. You probably have either locked in your answer or you just have no idea and you're making a guess. So if you're going to make a guess, lock in that guess now, because I'm about to give you guys my answer. And my answer is, ready? My answer is Germany. And because this is part of the German Expressionism, they had all the crazy camera angles and the dark shadows and stuff like that, and really were experimental with their horror films, Nosferatu being one of the most famous ones, along with Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. We're going to maybe do some exploration of this in the future, by the way, on the channel. Think about that. That might be coming, not in the near future, but I'm thinking about doing that. So if you're interested in that, let me know. But Germany is my answer. We'll check the card. Germany. Yep, it's Germany. Like I said, the new movie was also set in Germany, so they kept that true to the movie, the 1922 original movie. So maybe you knew that one. Hopefully you got it right. And if you didn't, let me know what you guessed, of course. But that's going to do it for this week's video. Thank you very much to Castellar for recommending this movie to me. And if you've got a recommendation of something you guys think I should check out, leave it in the comments below. If I haven't seen it, maybe I'll do a video about it. We can talk about that one. But until next week, when we're talking about something else, I'm just going to say, class dismissed.